The Oklahoma Sooners have a pair of wide receivers that could be very highly thought of in the 2025 NFL draft circles, and the Sooners are getting a lot of buzz on a 2025 cornerback as well.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is as big a fan of Monopoly Go. The mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly, so join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. My name's John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners, and man, it's that time of year. Okay, the draft is done. We're looking ahead to fall ball. We're looking ahead to fall camp. We're starting to kind of readjust our expectations and readjust our thought process on who we think is going to be a breakout star. We talked about that in yesterday's show. But it's never too early to look ahead to the 2025 NFL draft. And several analysts across the Draft Nic sites have already pinpointed a couple of Oklahoma Sooner wide receivers that could be buzzworthy next spring. One Nic Anderson and one Deion Burks. Pro Football Network, now it's not as well known as like Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Talk, but Pro Football Network does a great job covering the draft and the NFL. But they have Nic Anderson as the number 5 wide receiver in the 2025 draft class. I've always expected that he was, if he had another productive year in 2024 like he did in 2023, that we'd probably see the last of Nic Anderson and he'd be off to the NFL. Got great size, great tools, great speed, able to win at various levels of the offense. And it would not surprise me one bit to see him be a top 50 draft selection next spring. So Nic Anderson already receiving a little bit of love after a big season in 2023.
Do you think there's any money for you and I to corner the market on, hey, here's what the draft Knicks got right 1 year ago to today, and we revisit this conversation 1 year from now, and we just compile everything, publish our report, let's make it a book so we can sell plenty of copies to draft nerds, and we'll find out what in fact was right and what in fact was way off, because the draft, the mock draft, the first 2025 mock draft is probably radically different. And I know it has been for 22, 23, 24. It's like those first ones, every once in a while, okay, the couple of quarterbacks, the Caleb Williams thing, okay, we had that one figured out, a couple of years ago. But the rest of it, there's a lot of shuffling. As it pertains to Oklahoma, yeah, maybe, would love for Nic Anderson to not be in the 2025 NFL draft. Would like for him to come back and spend one more season at OU. But if, in fact, that day arrives for Oklahoma, this could be something that they get right based on his production, what it looked like a season ago, John, where if he can, stay healthy with Jackson Arnold, what maybe his 24 season looks like for OU. I don't think there's any doubt that he is trending toward being a day 1, day 2 type guy in the NFL draft where you're a top 100 type receiver. I think that's absolutely on the table for him if he goes and duplicates and then surpasses really what 23 looked like for Nic Anderson. And, oh, by the way, one Dane Brugler of The Athletic, speaking of the, hey, let's revisit this in 365 and see how spot on or way off this one was. He released his initial 2025 NFL mock draft, and there was a Sooner in his first round. He only did the first round mock draft for 25, and it was one Deion Burks at number 29. So that's a pair of receivers from Oklahoma that are getting that early NFL draft buzz, John. And I would say that, based on what we saw in the spring game, Burks is absolutely, I don't know if he's a first rounder, John, but I do think that he, like Anderson, is going to have a chance to be a solid day 2 guy when we talk about the dust settling on the 2025 NFL draft, a surefire top 100 guy, I think.
Yeah, top 100 easily, top 50, no doubt for me. First round, I would say probable. He was a guy that was getting a little bit of first-round NFL draft buzz from some places, maybe not everywhere, after his season at Purdue, just based on his traits, explosive, agile, quick in the short area. He's also got great long speed as well. He doesn't have that kind of prototypical 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver size that you're looking for, but with what he's got to work with, I mean, he does a great job, and he's going to be a big-time playmaker for Oklahoma in 2024. And then at the NFL level, it's not outside the realm of possibility to see him go in the first round in the NFL draft in 2025 because everybody's trying to capture that big play ability. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to find a Tyreek Hill. Everybody's trying to find a Marvin Mims, to the Denver Broncos. They're all trying to find a Marquise Hollywood Brown who went into the first round to the Baltimore Ravens just a few years ago. And so if Deion Burks can go have the season like everybody's expecting him to have in 2024, man, I have no doubt that he's going to thrust himself into that top echelon of the NFL draft. There's 5 positions that the NFL really puts a premium on: quarterback, offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, and pass rusher. You are one of those 5 players. You have a greater likelihood of being drafted in the first round of the draft because they are positions of higher premium or higher value at the NFL level. And so being a wide receiver already gives him a bit of a bump for Nic Anderson and for Deion Burks, but with the explosiveness, the agility, I mean, he can do so many different things for you on a football field that it's going to make it really hard for teams to pass him up. Now, he's probably not going to be one of those guys like a Marvin Harrison Jr. that ascends into the top 10 of the NFL draft. But, I mean, that first round, that is well within the realm of possibility for a guy like Deion Burks. What's crazy to think of, and I'm writing a story right now for Sooners Wire, it's like all the guys that could potentially be drafted next year. You could have 3 wide receivers drafted next season or next NFL draft. We've talked about Anderson. We've talked about Deion Burks. I really think Jalil Farouk is a draftable wide receiver. Fumbles aside, this is another guy that just does a lot of things for you, and he's like the prototypical 4th wide receiver on an NFL depth chart because he can play special teams, he can return kicks, he can do things in the jet sweep game and the wide receiver screen game. He just does so many really good things for you at quote-unquote Deebo Samuel light that some NFL GM is going to look at Jalil Farouk and be like, that's a guy that easily fits on our roster because he can play in a variety of roles and help out on special teams, which if you're going to be a 4th or 5th wide receiver in the NFL, you've got to be able to help out on special teams, which Jalil Farouk can. And that doesn't even include a guy like Andrel Anthony, who's going to be coming back from injury. What does his potential draft stock look like too? I mean, so you're looking at maybe 3 wide receivers that could get drafted next year. Aside from everything else, I mean, this is a loaded wide receiver room that Emmett Jones has stacked together for this season and beyond.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to take us right down that pathway toward Andrel Anthony. If he comes back and he's healthy in the final quarter of the season, John, final half of the season, I don't know what the timeline would look like there. We'll probably have a better idea once the fall rolls around, just exactly kind of where Andrel Anthony's at and how, close or far away he is from returning. And then, what that prognosis would look like when, in fact, he would return. But let's say it's the final quarter of the season. If he comes in and impacts things for Oklahoma, it looks like the Andrel Anthony from the beginning of last season, then I think is going to get drafted. Now, is he an early round pick or a day 1 or day 2 guy? No, I think he'd probably be a day 3 guy, but still, that just shows you, the weaponry. This Oklahoma receiving group is really good going into next season. That doesn't even bring into account a guy like a Jaden Gibson that could take a big step forward, needs to. I wouldn't consider him today anywhere close to those other names that we've discussed just because we haven't seen the type of production on a consistent basis to merit that for Oklahoma. But Jaquez Petaway, right? Not a draftable name this next year for Oklahoma, but somebody that maybe takes a big step forward. The freshman guys haven't even gotten to really see a lot of Zion Kearney and on and on and on. So long route to say that, yes, I think Oklahoma's in a good position and Jackson Arnold is in a good position with what Oklahoma has at wide receiver, John.
It's built to last. This is not a wide receiver group that's going to have a 1-year flash in the pan, and then you're going to see all these guys get drafted, and then you're like, okay, now what? No. Jaden Gibson, I think, is going to be around for another couple of years. The fact that he hasn't entered the portal at this point means he's bought into the plan. He's bought into the process of development at the University of Oklahoma. And so even if he does not have that full-on big-time productive year in 2024, I mean, he's going to slot in as one of your starting wide receivers going into 2025. And that's going to be the year that he can go and show what he's capable of and have that big-time season that is going to put him on NFL draft radars for the 2026 NFL draft. But then it just self-propagating, what they've done at the wide receiver position with Emmett Jones and the production that a guy like Drake Stoops had in his final year at Oklahoma that got him an undrafted free agent contract with the Los Angeles Rams. It's that development that is making the difference for Oklahoma at wide receiver. And hey, that development is happening across the board on both sides of the ball. And that's a big reason why the Sooners are killing it on the recruiting trail right now. They're making a move, creating a lot of buzz for a 4-star cornerback from the state of Oklahoma. We'll discuss him next, coming up here on Locked On Sooners.
It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. That's because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Again, I love the number that's out there. The number versus Texas, Oklahoma getting 9.5 points versus the Horns. That's the only number on the board game-wise for Oklahoma so far from FanDuel. And then over 7.5. I think Oklahoma's winning at least 8 games next season. Don't buy into the trepidation, ladies and gentlemen. But that's with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook.
Thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Every day, make sure you're tuned in for our show with Alex Sirocco, getting you ready for Bedlam a little bit later this week. We're going to also ask her about the return of Bedlam for 2025 at Hall of Fame Stadium, as Patty Gasso revealed in her weekly media briefing this Tuesday. So it's going to be exciting. That's going to be an exciting conversation. Cannot wait to share that with you all and hear that as well. The Oklahoma Sooners received a Rivals Futurecast for one Trystan Haynes, cornerback at a Carl Albert High School, a 4-star player that at one point in time appeared maybe towards, trending towards Notre Dame, but since it was a Notre Dame insider for Rivals that issued this Futurecast favoring the Oklahoma Sooners in the recruitment of Trystan Haynes. He's a 4-star prospect across the board. On3 ranks him as a top 200 player. 247 Sports, he's the number 119 player. ESPN, number 161 at cornerback. He's a top 20 cornerback in the class. And then in the state of Oklahoma, he's a top 5 player. So again, Brent Venables and his coaching staff prioritizing the state of Oklahoma, making sure that they lock down the state's best players. And by moving the needle a little bit more with Trystan Haynes, they've already got a couple of his teammates, Marcus James, Trine Washington, committed to the Sooners 2025 class. Xavier Robinson, a former teammate. Kevin Sperry, a former teammate who's now at Denton Guyer. So really, really moving the needle with Carl Albert and in the state of Oklahoma in particular.
Yeah, and I think this is a significant recruitment development on the Futurecast side because Tyler James, moving it from Notre Dame to Oklahoma, you look across the board, and Tyler James, by the way, a Notre Dame guy. Mike Singer covers Notre Dame for On3. He put in about 3 weeks ago a prediction for Notre Dame for one Trystan Haynes. So is this the ledger swinging back the other direction for Oklahoma? A couple of the Sooner reporters for some time, Colin Kennedy way back in the season in October, same with Josh McCuistion. Colin Kennedy, of course, of Sooners Illustrated with 24/7 Sports. Josh McCuistion, the co-publisher, the recruiting editor for Sooner Scoop of On3. They've each had predictions in for Oklahoma here with Haynes dating back to October. The last couple of predictions have been split. one for Notre Dame, and then another one here for Oklahoma. So that feels significant, John, that you've got somebody else that is willing to say, hey, I think this is trending OU's direction.
And it's like we talked about with the commitment of Cortland Guillory, Jay Valai continues to really do good recruiting work out there on the trail in the state of Texas, in the state of Oklahoma, to land these blue chip prospects. He's got great size. He's 6'2" already and still growing. This is a guy that continues to add size and add weight and bulk to his frame. And that's going to benefit him in the SEC, in Brent Venables' defense, as they try to get longer. This is the kind of guy that they're looking for, the Jacoby Johnson types, the Makari Vicker types, guys that have a bigger wingspan, bigger length, are going to be able to cut down on some of those passing windows a little bit easier than some of our shorter in stature players. But again, Trystan Haynes, a very athletic player. He's a really good guy that he does a good job of attacking the football in the air, playing the ball, and finding a way to manipulate his body to get to the ball and not attack the man.
It, I think, bears repeating, though we've said this many times over the course of this cycle for Oklahoma, that Kevin Sperry jumping on board early and his decision to come to the state of Oklahoma, though he's not at Carl Albert anymore, but coming to Carl Albert and being a part of that program there really has seemingly put Oklahoma in a great spot here in state in this class. They've already got a couple of commitments from Carl Albert. Obviously, Sperry at one point in time was a commitment from Carl Albert, and now Trystan Haynes could potentially be tracking in that direction as well. Again, I love the length on the back end for Oklahoma. This, it's crazy. We're one day removed from talking about another defensive back committing in this class to Oklahoma, and one Mr. Guillory. So Oklahoma's doing a very good job in the defensive backfield. I love what Brandon Hall, I love what Jay Valai collectively in tandem are doing for Oklahoma. I like the body types of players that they're getting commitments and ultimately signatures from. I love the athleticism that those two guys are bringing into the defensive backfield for Oklahoma. It's, again, across the board, where I just think if we could be having this conversation a decade ago in 14, we weren't having as many of these conversations. It was a little bit of panic across the board on why is Oklahoma not finding more blue chip type guys defensively across the board. And Oklahoma's done that. And that's, again, a part of Brent Venables, but really just the entirety of the staff. So not a commitment yet, but a good sign for Trystan Haynes to a defensive back class that already looks pretty good, John.
Yeah, the defensive back groups over the last couple of cycles have looked really, really good based on what Jay Valai and Brandon Hall are doing. And I expect that to continue. They continue to move the needle across the country with blue chip prospects. Oklahoma are among the teams with the most blue chip prospects committed for 2025. And I don't expect that to slow down at all. I expect them to stay in that top 5, top 6 range of blue chip prospects. They're number 6 in the 247 sports team recruiting rankings right now. And it's going to only continue to improve, or at least stay solidified, even as other schools add commitments over the rest of the cycle. But, man, going into the SEC, that's no joke. Oklahoma's kind of getting a bit of a recruiting bump because they're moving into the SEC, but soon they're going to have to play football games. Our friends over at The Athletic are a bit split on Oklahoma's first year in the Southeastern Conference. Let's discuss that next, coming up here on Locked On Sooners. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly challenging and changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine, And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on! Over at The Athletic, our friends have a little bit of trepidation about your Oklahoma Sooners moving into the SEC. In one of their latest Q&A sessions, their mailbags for The Athletic. Who was this that wrote this, Josh? I don't have the author's
That would be
name.
Mr. Seth Emerson.
Thank you. Mr. Seth Emerson was asked, what are the honest expectations for Oklahoma? Is Brent Venables creating something sustainable in Norman? That was the question asked by Asa M from somewhere. Who knows? Presumably in Sooner Nation. And he had, I think, a lot of really good points. Oklahoma is a team that is kind of in this transition period because new quarterback, new offensive coordinators, new offensive line, basically. And so it's understandable that maybe there are some folks out there that have questions that aren't really sold on the Oklahoma Sooners going into 2024. And yet there are people also at The Athletic that believe that Oklahoma is going to be okay. Stuart Mandel had Oklahoma at number 15 in his way too early power rankings for the 2024 season, although that was 6th in the SEC. But Oklahoma's got a tough schedule. And so, they'll be either a fringe playoff contender or in the playoffs. But I mean, it's fair, I think, and reasonable to have some questions about where Oklahoma's headed this season.
Here's part of what Seth Emerson wrote. Quote, a lot will depend on how Jackson Arnold fares at quarterback, but the schedule and new coordinators have me pessimistic about Oklahoma being a college football playoff contender. Long term, I would bet on the prowess of this program to make it consistently competitive in the SEC. This isn't Nebraska in a recruiting sense, more isolated geographically and relying on its name. Oklahoma still has close access to Texas and now can carry its name into other areas. And then discusses the finish in the recruiting class recently and where they're tracking in 2025. So let's break that down. Jackson Arnold, how much or how little does he hold the keys to how this season plays out for Oklahoma? It's a quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback is always going to have a big, heavy influence on the way things go. However, like at the college football level, you can get by and you can win a lot of games, even if your quarterback is just okay. We've seen it. I mean, we saw it back in the 2020 season with Spencer Rattler. Like, he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but the Oklahoma Sooners were contending. They won the Big 12 title. Yeah, they lost games. I think it was Iowa State and Kansas State that season, back to back. But I mean, he was good enough. You go back to, and a lot of it was due because the defense was not very good that year. This is going to be a season where the defense is pretty good. They're returning a lot of talent and a lot of production, a lot of veteran leadership. They should be really good. And that means that it's not going to be solely on Jackson Arnold's shoulders to carry this team, which was the problem during the Lincoln Riley era. You were so reliant on the quarterbacks playing supernatural football that because everything else around it was not very good, especially on the defensive side of the ball, you couldn't rely on the defense to get a stop and to force a punt. So your quarterbacks had to be superhuman and will you to wins. Well, that's not going to have to be the case. That's not going to be the case. Brent Venables has brought a more balanced approach because of his ability to recruit on the defensive side of the football and have success on the defensive side of the football dating back over 30 years. And so that's going to create a much better balanced approach that says, hey, we don't have to rely on our quarterback throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns for us to win a game. Our quarterback can go for 225, a touchdown, throw an interception, and we can still win a football game because we've got a defense that's capable of holding teams under 24 points, giving our offense a chance to win. We've got a rushing attack that can go and carry the load if our quarterback's not feeling that day, not having his best day, especially when we go into places like, Baton Rouge, and we go into Oxford, and we go into Auburn. Like, those are going to be really, really tough places to play. So it cannot be all on the quarterback. And thankfully, Brent Venables is setting this team up to where it's not going to be all on your quarterback.
I hope that Oklahoma gets its flowers with the way that some folks, Seth Emerson included, write about this schedule that Oklahoma is going to face. And it's challenging. Look, it is. It's a big time step up week in, week out compared to what Oklahoma's seen over the last decade or so, in particular in the Big 12. Though, early Big 12 years, early 2000s, Red October was a dominant run by OU, and it came against the best conference in America. So it's not as though Oklahoma in its history has not faced gauntlets in conference play. But look, it's a reality that this is going to be more challenging. Having said that, if Oklahoma, the way some people talk about this thing, if they go 9-3, I want people to be bowing down at the altar of Oklahoma, even doing that, because Seth Emerson's the same guy here that says in his first predictions, his game-by-game predictions, had Oklahoma finishing 7-5 and 3-5 in the SEC. So if that's the first year for Oklahoma in the SEC, there will be a widespread panic among Sooner fans, because I just think that's about as bad as it can get for Oklahoma this next season. So I don't see it getting that bad for OU. The other thing that I would take to task a little bit from Emerson, and I think partially it's maybe his lack of understanding of the situation, the two new coordinators. Well, really, to me, okay, I mean, do you honestly really only have one new coordinator? Zach Alley comes in, and we've been told in parts that he's coming in and he's going to be calling the shots, and he's going to be pressing A and B on the D-pad, and he's the one, running the controller here. And then kind of there was some pushback on that from Brent Venables a little bit, that no, it's not totally Zach Alley just running the defense either for Oklahoma. So, really you got one new offensive coordinator here if you're talking coordinators turnover for Oklahoma. And oh, by the way, Sooner fans kind of wanted a turnover with the offensive coordinator, and this might be a positive for OU, though that is fair to say, hey, it remains to be seen there.
Yeah, so much of the success, or how we view the success of Seth Littrell, isn't necessarily just going to be in the numbers that the offense puts up. It's going to be in the mentality, and it's going to be in the attitude. It's going to be in the, can we convert short yardage on a regular basis? It's going to be on the not necessarily playing for 3rd and 4th down, but being able to convert at a regular rate on 3rd and 4th down. But I mean, so much of the quote unquote failings of Jeff Lebby came in big moments at the end of games, or in big key situations, short yardage, where this team just was not a great short yardage team. But I think that they'll get better. And I think hopefully, and this is what everybody was kind of clamoring for, hopefully Seth Littrell brings in a little bit more attitude, a little bit more nastiness to the offense, and a little bit more kind of mucking it up, so that it's not just this, spread them out, skill-based. Obviously going to be a lot of that because he comes from that air raid background, but can they line it up 4th and 1? You got to get 1.5 yards to get that first down to either end the game or extend the game. Can they get it on a regular basis? Because it's going to come down to all of those little moments in those games against Alabama, in that game against Tennessee, Auburn, Ole Miss, LSU. All those games are going to come down to those key moments. And can Oklahoma's offense and the defense under Zach Alley, can they come through in those big moments? I mean, that's going to be the biggest key and the biggest test. I feel good about Oklahoma, even though it's a tough schedule. Like LSU, yeah, they're going to be good, but what kind of step do they kind of take a step back? You lost the Heisman Trophy winner. You lost Malik Neighbors. I mean, you lost a lot to that offense that they may not be as good offensively as they were last year. And that defense was not good a year ago. They're hoping to take a big step up defensively. I think Ole Miss is going to be a really good team, and I think they're going to be a contender. But, so much of it's going to depend on Jackson Dart. And can he take care of the football? And is he going to be able to overcome some of the challenges that Oklahoma's defense forces and makes him face? So, yes, there are tough games, but I think Oklahoma is closer to some of those teams than people are giving them credit for. The only team in the SEC that is in Tier 1 all by itself, and that's Georgia. And then there's a big group of Tier 2 teams, and Oklahoma's in that tier of teams. And I think that's why they're going to have some more success in 24 than a lot of people are going to expect from them.
Well, and you mentioned, hey, the offense, defense making key plays. I would just add to that the coaching staff positioning those guys. And I'm talking head coach too, Brent Venables, timeouts at the right time, having timeouts still left in the right moments, proper, on and on and on. Just the management side that has been, I think, improved from year one to year two, but was still spotty in spots for Oklahoma, right? Where you didn't go in and say, no, it's time to be aggressive now in Lawrence, Kansas. Just the, knowing when to hit the accelerator or to pull off the game management from a coaching standpoint has to be better for Oklahoma to win those swing moments in the SEC. That's going to be a key detail as well. But I'm like you, and I would add Missouri to that list. I mean, is Missouri going to double down on who they've been? I like the aggression with which they're attacking, not at Oklahoma's expense, the transfer portal and in the recruiting trail, but hey, they're doing things that they have not been known to do. So, hey, I see that, I feel that, but look, you got to go show me that you can double down on a good season because you're Missouri.
You're Missouri, and Eli Drinkwitz hadn't had more than 6 wins at Missouri until last year. So we'll see. We'll see if that's going to be a continued trend for them or if they fall back into the pack a little bit more in 2024. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell and hit that subscribe button to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. You can also hear Josh Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. You can read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at Sooners Wire. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.